most important thing is not even the business, but rather focusing on the family. And if you have if you focus on the family culture and invest in the family culture, then it's the human capital in the family which will ultimately flourish across generations, and then allow and enable the business to adapt to changing times and changing circumstances within the family so that it can flourish as well. I think large multi-generational families have two choices. They can either be conservative and be certain that their wealth will decline over time, or they can continue to take risks, prudent risks, and have a reasonable chance that the wealth will continue to grow if it is prudently overseen by qualified people. I think the most important thing to remember for a wealth owner is that the people sitting on the other side of the table are there to be in business, and they have to put food on their own table. And so it's your job as the wealth owner to protect your own interests, to be knowledgeable, and to hold people accountable who are advising you, so that they end up working for you rather than you working to serve their business purposes. Well, if you think about a family over multiple generations, typically the family will grow because parents have multiple children, those multiple children have spouses, and then they have children. And as you have more and more people in the family and they cease to live under one roof, it's really important to identify clearly what the affinities are that are important to all family members, and then to invest in those affinities, those things, those issues that they share in common. And sometimes it's a family home, sometimes it's doing public service together, sometimes it's running the business, sometimes it may be other things. But if you continue to invest in those affinities, then the family ties will stay strong as the family grows and prospers over generations. If you don't know where you want to go, and you don't know how to measure how well you're doing, you're never going to get there. And so it's really important before you go out and hire financial advisors to have a pretty clear understanding of what it is you're trying to accomplish with your financial assets, and also to have a pretty clear methodology for holding those advisors accountable for what it is you're trying to accomplish, as I said earlier. So if you do that, it requires actually a fair bit of homework up front. And when families have liquidity events, when they sell their businesses, they tend to be under a lot of pressure to do something with the proceeds. And my response to that is stop, take your time, and educate yourself, because it's only with the education and reflection that you'll know where you want to go, and that is going to determine whether or not you get there. You know, it was a stressful time, and as it is, I think, for any family that's selling its business. And we didn't have a plan for what we were going to do after the business was sold. So two things happened. One is that within a year, no family members were working for the company anymore. And the buyer was a good buyer. It was just that it was very different working for somebody else than it was working for your own family. The second thing that happened is that because there wasn't a plan, entropy took over. And entropy is a concept which says that the universe tends to move towards a state of randomness unless there is energy put in place to try to hold things together. And we didn't have the energy, and so the family drifted apart. And you know, we still suffer from that today, though parts of the family are now starting to come back together again, which is very exciting. You know, when you think about great leaders, what they are remembered for most, and this would be true of business leaders but also political leaders, is the clarity of values that they hold. And I do believe that it's values and how those values are transmitted from one generation to the next that are really a key glue in maintaining those affinities that I was talking about earlier. And you can transmit values through stories about your ancestors, but mostly you transmit them through your own actions. I've never found children who respond very well to do as I say but not as I do. Being transparent is a very important part of, I think, being a successful family. And part of transparency is communicating in a language that other people understand. It is part of the responsibility of the family office to explain things in ways that people are likely to understand. And I think the other thing that they should do is to focus on the long-term growth and development of the family rather than on what happened last month or last quarter or even last year. One of the beauties of productive people and productive, flourishing families is that those individual members can be useful to other people, and for that they get paid. And some of them are useful because they're teachers, other people are useful because they build businesses, other people are useful because they're financial experts. But it is not only the management of the financial assets per se of a family that makes it successful and will allow it to grow, but actually the individual responsibility of each family member or of each generation to recreate the wealth. And they can do it just like it happened in the first generation. In fact, it's easier once the first generation actually was successful.